Erin Ade, and this is Boom Bust. Here are some of the stories we're tracking for you today. Yes, the shutdown in a fit of Yuletide spending.
Hope they do.
Leave it to Congress to be more than generous to a select and very, very few. No? Wouldn't you say?
I would expect nothing less.
Bill at the very last minute. Can you tell us about those? Come back to the studio, quick. Looks like it's about to rain out there. Now, Bob, you actually combed through the bill that passed late.
And anything mandatory can actually be extended if it's approved by the debt ceiling. Now, Congress has 20
consequences of this, and we know that Standard & Poor's was just inches away from downgrading U.S. debt again, as they did in 2011. Again, great at their jobs. Sadly, I don't think this is the last we will be hearing about the budget impasse. I wish it was, but we have 3 months until we get to talk about it again.
That we hope to delve into more detail in the coming days.
Sure do. Now, in 2008, financial meltdown caused massive panic throughout the country, and many people today still find themselves deeply in debt. However, one couple who don't fall into this category are Mike and Cindy Jones. And if financial Armageddon comes again anytime soon, they'll be ready for it. Be English.
Hello again.
Now, Bob, you know, there's a lot of startups here. We have Butterfly Labs, RoboCoin Technologies, and Cointerra, and they're capitalizing on this Bitcoin. I think it's kind of a sham industry in the sense that, you know, not a sham industry, well, yeah, a sham industry in the sense that they know they're going to be profiting off of people's ignorance in the Bitcoin marketplace.
Are they profiting off of chains? There is actual money to
mine for Bitcoin and be a billionaire within
When I start hearing about bucket shops in Florida who are trying to call people in and reporting them.
Now, just yesterday, the big news on the Bitcoin front, and just, you know, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Silk Road, and that was, you know, the black market.
It probably means that the Chinese authorities have.
I was going to bring this up later in our discussion, but I want to now because we're talking about Chinese authorities.
Sure.
One thing that they're doing in Argentina, the market there for Bitcoin is going up really high because people are hedging the probability of.
It does, and we saw something very similar in Cyprus. That was the catalyst for this huge run-up in Bitcoins that alerted to the media to
money off of that as well.
Well, yes, there's price volatility.
And what's his name from Japan?
Satoshi?
Satoshi, there you go.
If I got that wrong, I apologize to everybody.
But, I mean, that guy was something good for Bitcoin or for the consumers.
Not if it became widely known and resulted in a crisis of confidence for the currency.
There you go.
Force in Europe eventually come home to roost here right in the U.S.
Vigilantes. Now, Bob, well, there you have it on the short-term bond front and long-term. Yes. But on the subject of quantitative easing, you recently talked with an astute Fed watcher. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And it is Bob English again. Bob, how are you?
Great. This is a big deal.
This is a big deal. This is a big deal. Now, do you think Ackman is clapping
squeeze, but also he was betting against the
him and his position?
Well, let's take a look at India, and let's give Herbalife the benefit of the doubt and say it's not a Ponzi scheme. All business structure in terms of the rule of law. People are going to say, well, it should be regulated, of course. The market is a good rate before I can completely put my foot in my mouth, perhaps. No, my original point
take it out.
Was to replace the old investors and pay the old investors off. That's the very nature of a
precisely, and they haven't run into any serious, you know, regulatory issues here in the U.S. yet. But there has, you know, courts aren't being. There's been lots of.
Now, it could have been 2 months ago. It could be 2 months from now when we would expect to hear them in certain respects.
Ooh, what a diplomat. Okay. Now, Bob.
Hello, Erin.
Hello, hello.
Ask me about the ethics. I know you want.
I do. I'm dying to do it. Now, first and foremost, is it fair to compare Magna Charge to
somebody else doesn't necessarily have a fiduciary duty to that other counterparty? You know, the person who's buying it could be a pension fund, could be a hedge fund, but they themselves were not. They were abiding by the strict letter of the law, at least according to the law. So, is it ethical? As you said, it probably has a considerable amount of clout.
Will be sufficient enough, or that Fantex will end up. Offering is obviously intended to capitalize on the massive popularity of fantasy football, which we all know about. And it's important to remember that fantasy football is just that. It's fantasy. It isn't real. So obviously.
It's real to the people in the office. Come on.
It's real to the people in the office who wouldn't let me in the fantasy football league.
In the athlete's revenues or his income stream. Other big.
And also, like you said, you know, it reminds you of one exchange. Now, another thing, you know, there's the Hollywood Stock Exchange that allows people to Cantor Fitzgerald more than a gimmick, kind of like buying a gas star. Oh, wow, Freudian slip. There you go. But is it kind of like purchasing a star? You know, it's
well, hey, maybe the PR
crowdfunding platform of letting entrepreneurs sell stakes in themselves.
As long as I can do the Paulson.